Pastor Damont. Good to see you all through the internet today. I hope that everyone is staying safe, everybody's staying healthy. Hopefully some of you have been able to get out a little bit more since some of the restrictions have been softened up a little bit. And so we're looking forward to gathering together for worship. And as I said before, we're looking at the 31st of May, 10 o'clock for morning worship service. And so no nursery, no children's church. We're going to be here together. We're going to be spaced out. We're going to have our hand sanitizer out and everything to keep our social distancing and to keep everything the way that it should be, try to keep everybody safe. But we're going to gather for worship. And so let me just say, if you're not comfortable coming out and gathering for worship, that's okay. We'll still record it and put it out online and all of that again. But we want to gather for worship. As many people that feel safe in doing that and want to come out and join us for worship at 10 o'clock on the 31st. Also, just let me keep you posted up because we're still looking ahead to the days ahead. And so hopefully we're going to be able to get back on our full schedule again soon if this virus eases up the way that it has been. And so that we'll be able to get back to doing our Sunday school and things like that at some point. But right now, just going to settle for doing our worship service at 10 o'clock, and we're going to see how that goes. And so, we're glad that we're going to be able to do that. And, if on that Sunday, if you're not feeling well or if you're sick, please, don't come. We don't want to put anybody at risk. But, we're going to gather together for worship. And so today I'm coming to you from a different spot. I'm coming to you from the bride's room. Now, last week I realized that the wind kind of messed with our sound just last week, and so should be able to hear a little bit better this week, other than the alarm beeping every time somebody goes in and out of the door. But that's okay. But you think, well, the bride's room, what's up with that? Well, the reason I'm in the bride's room today is because I'm going to talk to you about the storm. When the storm passes by. And, I think many a storm has started in the bride's room. And if you've never been here for a wedding, you haven't seen excitement yet because, it's like everything is drama. And, it's like, oh, this didn't show up, or this person's late, or the flowers aren't right, or whatever. I mean, there's been many a storm that's come up right here in the bride's room. And so I want to share with you a little bit this morning about when the storm passes by, and to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about, because it may be that you're going through a storm right now, not just a virus storm. You may be going through a storm in your family, maybe going through a storm with your marriage. It may be a storm just from being out of work, or if you're a business owner, maybe you've not been able to reopen your business yet, or you are having some financial difficulties with that. But maybe a storm of sickness or a storm of sorrow. We have storms that come into our lives. And to illustrate that, I kind of went back to a really big storm, to the storm that happened back in Genesis chapter 7 and 8, where we find the story of Noah and the story of the flood. And to illustrate that, I just wanted to share with you a little bit. The story of Noah and the flood, how the earth had become so wicked, the people had become so wicked that God was going to blot everything out other than Noah and his sons and their families. The door was open to anybody else who wanted to come, but there were not any other takers who took seriously that God was going to destroy the human race through a flood. And so when we look at this storm that happened, I think it's kind of interesting. I'm kind of a numbers guy. I get interested in the numbers when I start looking at different things. And, there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the reasons is because I'm a nut. It's like when I'm watching a Western. I count how many Indians are in the party when they attack, and I count how many get shot and fall off their horse, and I count how many ride away. And it's interesting that 30 Indians can ride in, and 20 of them can get shot off, and 30 Indians ride back out again. I never have figured out how that works. I guess that's the TV or the movie thing. But I looked at the numbers, and so I wanted to share with you some of the information from what happened in Genesis chapter 8, because the Bible tells us that God destroyed the earth by flood. And you know what the Bible tells us is that when this happened, Noah was 600 years old. And that it tells us plainly on the 17th day of the second month. And you know, if to put it in our calendar, you know, that would be like February for us. So we could say like on the 17th of February that this storm took place, that you know the rain began to fall, and the rivers and the springs, you know, came flowing up, and the ocean tides came rushing in, and water came from everywhere until it destroyed the earth. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and so that all of this water was flowing from the heavens. It was flowing up from the springs. It was flowing from the ocean and the rivers and everywhere, until the Bible tells us that the earth was covered. Now, when the ark finally came to rest, the Bible tells us that it came to rest on Mount Ararat. Now, Mount Ararat is over 16,000 feet high. And so, you know, when you're looking at Mount Ararat, it was covered. When you're looking at Pikes Peak, it was covered. When you're looking at Mount Everest, it was covered. The water covered everything. The earth was covered. And the Bible tells us that the water was there, the water for 150 days. You know, for us, that's for 5 months. 5 months that the water covered the earth. But when we get to chapter 8, verse 1, something interesting happened. Because, you know, this flood had taken place. All the animals that couldn't swim for 5 months, you know, were dead. All of the people had been killed. You know, Noah had been on the ark with all of these animals that had been gathered. But in chapter 8, verse 1 of the book of Genesis, the Bible says this: "But God remembered Noah." So God remembered Noah, and the rain stopped. God remembered Noah, and the water subsided. And the Bible tells us that on the 7th month, for us that would be July, the 17th day, that is exactly 5 months after it started, that the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat. And that the water continued to go down, the water continued to decrease until the 10th month. The first day of the 10th month. For us, that would be October 1st. So Noah has been on the ark with these animals starting on February the 17th. Now we're at the 1st of October, and Noah begins to look for some sign that it's safe to go out. So he sends out the raven, and the raven doesn't come back. He sends out a dove, and the dove comes back. And then 7 days later, he sends out the dove again. The dove comes back with a branch in his mouth. 7 more days later, he sends out the dove again, and the dove doesn't come back. So obviously, it's found a place where it can land. And so, you know, the Bible tells us in verse 13, on the first day of the first month, January 1st, New Year's Day, of Noah's 601st year. So this has been going on for almost a year, that Noah has been on the ark with these animals. January of the next year, the Bible says that Noah, he opened up the ark, that he looked out, the ground was dry. He said, he said, well, the ground was dry, so Noah said, hot dog. You know, he jumped out. He said, get these animals out of here. I'm tired of being in here with these animals, you know. And he went out and took his family out of the ark. Well, no, that's not what the Bible says happened. The Bible didn't say that happened. The Bible tells us in verse 14 that on the second month, that's back to February again, on the 27th day, February the 27th in our calendar, verse 15 says, God spoke to Noah, saying, go out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. So the water had gone down. Noah looked out on January 1st and saw that the ground was dry, but he stayed in the ark for another month and 27 days, almost 2 more months. He stayed on the ark. Well, why would he do that? Because Noah knew that he wasn't going to walk out ahead of God. Noah was not going to get ahead of God. He waited until God said, okay, now you can go out. He looked out and it looked good. He looked out and the ground was dry. But he was waiting for God to say, okay, no, it's good for you to go out with your family now. I know he was probably tired of being stuck on this ark with all these animals for a year. And yet he waited until God gave him the word to go out. And so, when we get in the storm and we think the storm's over sometimes, you have a lot of people when a hurricane comes. Florida is famous for a lot of things. We're famous for sunshine and for beaches. We're also famous for storms, for hurricanes. And, a lot of people, when a hurricane comes, it's really bad. It's really windy and everything. And then you see, they say, oh, the sky's clearing up. And, it's safe for us to go out and the storm is over. What they're seeing is the eye in the center of the storm. There's another side of the storm that's coming. And so, Noah just said, he said, I know it looks good. In my mind and in my sight, it looks good, it looks safe, but I'm going to wait until I get a word from God. I'm not going to get out ahead of God. And so, that's what we need to do. We need to realize that, when we have a storm in our life, that God is in the storm with us. But God, when He brings us out of the storm on the other side, God will give us His word. He'll give us His instructions. He'll show us what we need to do. We need to wait on Him and not get out ahead of Him. And when we started talking about getting back together for worship again, we wanted to do this, a couple of months ago. So okay, we don't have any cases in Hernando County, hardly. The virus isn't really that bad here. We could get together for worship, and we didn't want to get out ahead of God, but we waited, we watched, we prayed, and it looked a week or two ago like it might be okay to go, but listen, we're not going to get out ahead of God. But I believe that the timing is right on May the 31st, that we are good to go for worship. And let me just encourage you. Don't get discouraged in the storm. Continue to trust God and wait on Him. We don't want to get out ahead of God. So I hope this has been a word that's been good for you this week, and it's encouraged you. And I hope to see you all on May the 31st, 10 o'clock for worship. God bless you and have a good week. We'll see you soon.